Welcome to the FASA Leadership Lounge, where we discuss various policies impacting school leaders in Florida. I am Michelle White, Executive Director of the Florida Association of School Administrators.
And I am Jessica Janasiewicz. I serve as the lobbyist for FAFSA and a number of school districts here in Florida. We have most of the 2025 legislative session behind us and only 2 weeks of regular session left.
Woohoo! To say we're a
Here we
little
go.
excited might be an understatement. But seriously, a lot has happened this week in the Capitol, and we definitely want to share those updates. Starting with one of the most positive events every session, Children's Week, which was amazing.
So fun.
It is when we literally have tens of thousands of handprints from students all across the state of Florida hung in the rotunda for the week. It is an absolute beautiful reminder to everyone really why we're there. These children, of course, are the future of our state, and every decision made now can have an impact on our children for the future. We definitely want you to make sure to share and see the Friday facts in our social media for some pictures. But the number of partners that end up coming together for Children's Week is amazing.
It's incredible.
And to see our legislators out there too in support of all things kids is it's inspiring. So, the other update of things that were signed this week, the governor has already signed House Bill 575 and 549, which, of course, we have talked about, that renames the Gulf into the Gulf of America. Florida is the first state to make these changes after that federal executive order. So, we're moving forward.
We're moving forward. There've also been quite a lot that's been quite a lot going on that's non-education related. So I thought we'd talk about some of that. First, the House Healthcare Budget Subcommittee has spent significant time investigating the Hope Florida Foundation and its use of $10 million that came to the foundation from a settlement with the state of Florida, but then appears to have been used in campaigns against Amendment 3 last fall. At the state level, we usually don't see people testifying in committees. It's a formal process, but not that formal. But they did actually have people under oath as part of these hearings. The governor has continued to express his displeasure with the House leadership, and leadership is fighting right back and saying that they are here to get to the bottom of whatever occurred, and the hearings will continue.
Lots of sparks.
Lots of sparks. The House also passed a bill that would add a constitutional amendment to the upcoming ballot in 2026, which would eliminate the lieutenant governor position. For the next election, was elected as a running mate with the future governor would also serve as the new commissioner of government efficiency. The bill would allow voters to decide if this is something that should continue. The Senate version of the bill was sponsored by then Senator and current Congressman Randy Fine, who had to resign from his Senate seat to run in the special election for the U.S. House of Representatives, for which he was successful. Since he resigned from his Senate seat, his bill was withdrawn from further consideration. That would usually mean the bill is absolutely dead, but we're seeing quite a lot of train bills in these final weeks of session, and this issue could come back to life as part of a moving train bill.
Absolutely. And we will talk about train bills in just a
Mhm.
couple of minutes. But to add to this, the House also passed House Bill 1321, which would limit the governor's say in the state university and college presidential searches. So the House wants more transparency in these searches. They will require the names of candidates under consideration to be shared publicly. The bill would also create term limits for the Board of Governors, the State Board of Education, and boards of trustees for individual colleges and universities. The Senate version does not go as far by opening all candidates in the search, but only the top three finalists. The governor, adding to the sparks of all of the other debates, has vowed to veto the House version of this bill should it pass.
Another interesting event that took place this week was the announcement from Senate President Ben Albritton that the U.S. Department of Agriculture fully supports the Rural Renaissance Bill, which is Senate Bill 110. This is obviously the number one priority for Senator Albritton. We've talked about that. And having the support of the Trump administration for the measure will likely help the bill as it moves through the process with the House and the governor. It's a rare thing for a presidential administration to weigh in on state policy. So this was definitely notable this week.
Absolutely. And that rural renaissance bill was temporarily postponed by the House committee, where it was slated to be heard on Tuesday. This was supposed to be its second committee hearing. That being said, the education related language that's contained within the bill was added to a different bill that also has many other education priorities, which will be House Bill 1267.
We have our first education train bill of the session. So let's talk for a minute about what a train bill is. In the legislature, a train bill refers to a bill that starts out with a single, usually non controversial or a broadly supported proposal, but it ends up with many unrelated amendments or additional provisions that are added to it, much like adding cars to a train. Some characteristics of train bills: they will cover multiple topics, they have a wide range of issues that may not be very related. There are add-on amendments. So legislators will add particular pet projects or maybe a piece of policy that just impacts their local area to things like this. It has a must pass nature. So they will oftentimes include legislation that they know one side or the other really wants. So, to your
Mhm.
example that you were just mentioning about the Rural Renaissance Bill, obviously the House is aware that this is a priority for the Senate president, hence putting it on this bill, hoping that he would maybe take some of the other policies that are contained with it. They are strategic, in their usage. That's why they come at the end of session. We don't see them on the first week. We see them at the towards the end, and that's because when they know it's crunch time and they may have some certain things that are must pass items, and you can stick them on this bill, and hopefully get it across the finish line is the hope for the proponents. A notable Florida specific example of a train bill that some of our members might remember is the 2016 education legislation that was House Bill 7029. This ended up being a bill that was 132 pages long, and it was the epitome of what a train bill is. It
Mhm.
had open enrollment provisions, athletic eligibility language, charter school funding requirements, construction oversight, higher education metrics, all contained in one bill. It was created late in the session by adding all these different proposals together, and it put them in one big bill. And then they were able to pass all those issues at one time, which some may have faced challenges had they been traveling on their own. But since they were a part of this larger measure, it passed. So that's just an example of things that we've seen in the past. And this year, of course, we have some coming our way.
Right, and they will lump them as far as, like, a category of all education-related things, but they may
Correct.
not all be specifically related like that example that you were just sharing.
Yep.
So, let's talk about 1267, which has a number of provisions, right? The bill now has language, like you said, this rural Renaissance education
Mhm.
information that they know was a Senate priority. They're pulling that into this, as well as legislation governing the boards of trustees of colleges and universities, college presidential requirements, so similar to the things that I've already talked about.
Yep.
In the other bills, language directing schools of hope and the use of public school facilities, school grade modifications, which is super scary to think that they may make these big jumps, affordable housing, language provisions relating to targeting students with math and reading deficiencies, changes to the New Worlds Reading Initiative, and language about instructional materials in colleges and universities. And that's just to name a few. There's even more. So, this, of course, is the very first. It's certainly not the last train bill that we'll see this session. All of these issues are undoubtedly impacting the budget process and where we go next, for
Abs
sure.
Absolutely, and speaking of the budget, there are a lot of unknowns at this point, but just to give an update to everyone, we mentioned last week that in both the House and the Senate proposals, they were about $4.4 billion dollars apart. We remain in that position. Nothing really happened this week of any consequence when it comes to budget conversations, at least in an official capacity. If we're going to end on time, we really need things to start in week 8 so that there can be the budget conferencing process. There are rumors flying all over the Capitol about how the budget is not going to end on time and it may not be for weeks. There are thoughts that perhaps they'll extend session or perhaps maybe end and then come back and do the budget. No one really knows, of course, except for the presiding officers who are the ones who get to make these decisions. But all we know is officially nothing has occurred just yet. So we'll be looking for week 8 to be the place that that starts. Our members may notice that FASA was one of a couple of associations here in the state that was asked to disseminate a letter from Chairman Senator Burgess. He's our chair of our Senate Ed Approps Committee. It detailed his position on the Senate's budget proposal and also the weighted add-on FTE issue. So we did send that out to members. So if you saw that, that was a request of the Senate to share, as did other associations.
Absolutely. And our goal of course is making sure that members are informed of what's going on,
Mhm.
and definitely no endorsement one way or another, but certainly want to make sure that our members have all of that information. So the next bit of language that did move and continued was both Senate Bill 140 and House Bill 123, which relates to the municipal charter school opportunities and opening more opportunities for charter school conversion. So both of these bills have now been amended to be the same. The only language included in those bills relates to the conversion of charter schools and takes out the facilities language that would have impacted districts on the purchase or repurposing of surplus properties. So the goal is, and the language references job engine charters, and it would really, they say, give parent choice in this and creating those votes.
That's right. That's right. So now that they're the same, more than likely that's a done deal, and we'll probably see those bills, one of those bills at least, ultimately become law. In addition to the bills that we discussed today, we have at least 5 bills that have the makings of a train bill. There are 2 on the Senate side and 3 on the House, and undoubtedly more and more to come. The ones to keep an eye on, at least for now, are Senate Bill 1702 and Senate Bill 1708. And on the House side, the aforementioned House Bill 1267, as well as House Bill 1115 and House Bill 1255. Keep an eye on those because they are likely going to be the ones where things are added. The title of those bills are all education, which is usually a good indicator that it's a very broad bill.
That's right, because they don't typically change the title of the bill, just the content,
Just the
just
content.
the content. So, other things that certainly moved this week, we are continuing to see our school safety bill, House Bill 1403, continue to move. It passed its last committee stop. The Senate version has already passed the floor. It's
Mhm,
ready for the House actually to either pick it up
mhm,
and pass it, or to replace that version with the House
mhm,
version so that they essentially are the same bill.
mhm,
They will modify them to be the same. So right now there's just slight differences,
mhm,
but the House can either, like I said, take up that Senate bill and pass it
mhm.
and therefore pass the Senate bill, or amend it to the House language. And then the Senate will have to have another floor vote to pass it fully.
That's right.
Also, Senate Bill 1590 is ready for a floor vote, and so is the similar bill in the House 875. They both address educator preparation programs and have some slight differences. Both would require the Department of Education in the state to create what they're calling the Coaching for Educator Readiness and Teaching, which is the
Mm,
certification program. And the goal is to have this program be the means to prepare and certify teachers. So those both are ready for the floor vote. House Bill 1539 also passed its last committee stop, and it is ready for the floor. The Senate version moved through one committee in the Senate and it TP'd in the second, which means they temporarily postponed it. They did not fully take it up, did not vote on it. It is a more controversial
mhm,
bill in that it adds to the definition of what materials are considered harmful to minors and how school boards can or cannot vote to keep materials on the shelves depending on the content. So they cannot say, oh, this has historical context that is appropriate for learning, but also may have pornographic or
Mm,
other type language
mhm.
that is not appropriate for students. So, more to come on that. It's definitely been in the media a significant amount, but the House is moving it, the Senate's kind of stalled.
Absolutely. So, where do we go from here in week 8? The House, we expect to carry on with the hearings surrounding the Hope Florida issue. They indicated that they will continue those in week 8. When they complete their work, we'll then see what additional action the House plans to take and then also what the Senate's response will be. So, right now, the Senate has really just been taking a back seat, watching what's going on. They may have an opportunity to take action in the coming weeks. We also believe that budget conferencing should begin this week.
Fingers crossed.
We don't if we don't see any movement, you can expect that there'll be an extended or perhaps even a special session in the future. We also should see a lot more floor time. So bills actually passing, as you mentioned at the top. We had Gulf of America. We've had a few bills passed that were education related, not many on both sides. That should change in week 8.
Absolutely. And so we are really looking forward to what these next 2 weeks of session will be. Of course, we continue to share updates through all of our newsletters, especially the Monday News Tracker and the FAFSA Friday Facts, as well as through our advocacy section of the FAFSA website at fasa.net. So make sure that you're checking in there regularly. We really appreciate you listening, and we would encourage you, of course, to share the FAFSA Leadership Lounge with your colleagues. And we look forward to sharing more updates. Please send us any questions, comments, thoughts. We would love to hear from you. So stay tuned for next week.
Thank you for listening to the Leadership Lounge podcast presented by the Florida Association of School Administrators. Today's podcast was hosted by Michelle White and Jessica Janasiewicz. The podcast is produced by Jeff Willoughby. Special thanks to musical director David Higgins. Make sure to subscribe to the Leadership Lounge podcast wherever you find your favorite podcasts. New episodes are released each Monday. For show topic suggestions, questions, or comments, please email communications@fasa.net. We hope you enjoyed the show.